Yeah, well, good. Because I went there like,
So she was asked, no, that way.
I always try to find a picture of you to show her, like, it was
So how are you doing?
and I was like, well, I don't go to parties. I go to parties. I work. That's what I do.
Oh, yeah.
I got there late.
I was leaving early.
And you were kind of leaving on.
I couldn't suffer through it yesterday.
It looked like it cut off.
No, you're fine. Nothing that I know
Because we literally came up and they ended up. They went all the way. No, I remember that.
Good afternoon. We'll call this meeting to order. This is the Planning and Oversight Committee meeting for June the 4th. Let's start with a call. Roll call, please, Susan.
Mr. Arnold?
I'm here.
Ms. Banks? Ms. Bell? Mr. Brown?
Here.
Ms. Carter? Ms. Clark? Ms. Friedman? Here. Reverend Gordon?
Here.
Ms. Harding? Here. Ms. Howe? Here. Ms. Mendoza-Locke? Here. Mr. Knowles? Mr. O'Connor?
Here.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Here.
Mr. Stengel? Major White? Here. Miss White?
Great. Thank you for all for being here. Let's have a recognition of visitors. Let's start in the back row with Jason.
Jason Powell, Executive Director, Task Northwest Ohio.
Richard Arnold.
Shannon Hitch, Board Staff.
Phil Stone, Board Staff.
Tina Layson, Board Staff.
Latrice Flowers, Board Staff.
Amy Perkmeyer, Board Staff.
Thank you. Anybody have any corrections or additions, amendments to the minutes of the May 7th meeting of this committee?
No.
No. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes? Second? Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Jenny, let's have the treasurer's report, please.
The financial statements for April are on page 8.
And these will be, since we don't have a meeting in July, these will be the last financial statements you see before our year-end financial statements. And I'll bring those to you in either August or September. So on page 8, you'll see in the local levy revenue, we are very close to budget. Year-to-date actual is 18.646 million, and our budget was 18.608 million. We received our final levy funds in April, so that is where we expect to end up for the year. On the federal revenue, we are still showing a significant variance. Most of that is due to the SOS 3.0 allocation. And then some of that variance is also due to the ARPA 2 allocations, which you might recall was with Core Diagnostic and the ZEP Center, and that was just a delay in the programs with Ohio Moss. And Ohio Moss has already told us we can carry those funds over into fiscal year 25. On the state revenue, again, the significant variance is due to the Access to Wellness grant. That underspending is currently over $500,000 for that program. And we are going to be requesting carryover of those funds from Ohio Moss. On the miscellaneous revenue, pretty much all that's in miscellaneous revenue is Danny's Place and City of Toledo ARPA. And both of those we expect to be pretty much timely. So at the end of the fiscal year, there might be some underspending on them, but the project in total is not expected to have underspending. And then when you look at the expenses, the grant funded program expenses line, that $2.6 million variance is pretty much tied exactly to the variances in the revenue that I just went over. And then I also wanted to point out on the purchase of service expenses, you'll see that our variance on year to date is $250,000. It's currently at 93% of our budget. And at this point last year, we were at 74% of our budget. Typically, years past, we've been a lot slower in purchase of service, and that is mostly due to the change in Medicaid rates that happened January 1st. So we're already seeing that a lot of our agencies are running lower on their allocations than they were previously. And then our increase in net assets for the month of April was $1.3 million. And that was, again, mostly due to the receipt of levy funds, and we got our quarterly allocations from Ohio Moss. On page 9 is the balance sheet. And as I just noted, in cash, we had an increase of $1.4 million, and that was due to the receipt of levy funds and fourth quarter allocations. And then I also wanted to point out on the fund, in the fund balances, the infrastructure transformation project had a decrease of $172,000. That was due to the usage of the funds. So we had significant payments go out for Ascend, Creatio, and Streamline, which you will see on pages 10 through 12. And I have a motion on page 7.
Are there any questions for Jenny before we move on? Not suggesting that there should be, I just want to give everybody a chance to ask any questions. All right, so we have a motion to approve the statement at the top of page 7. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Amy, take it away.
Okay, page 13, the civil commitment designations. Per revised code, every year the boards must designate the entities who are responsible for completing voluntary and involuntary admission evaluations. The MHRSB is also responsible for designating the attorneys who provide the evidence to substantiate the need, if there is a need for involuntary commitment at hearings. Specifically, those attorneys must demonstrate that the person is mentally ill and subject to court order, as well as offering evidence of the diagnosis, prognosis, record of treatment, and a less restrictive plan if that applies to the person. So this is done every year, and for the last 5 years, the board has designated Carla Davis and Chelsea Meister to conduct the involuntary commitment hearings on behalf of the board. Both of those ladies are interested in doing this again for fiscal year 25. So that is part of the motion that's there on page 13. And just as a remembrance from May, the board allocated $18,000 at the May board meeting for those services. So in the middle of page 13 is the motion, and the first one is for the ZEF Center, who acts on behalf of the board, to complete the evaluations for the admissions into NOPH. And then B are all of the hospitals that provide their chief clinical officers or their designees to complete the evaluations for involuntary admissions, as well as C is ZEF Center also, who represents the board to complete the evaluations for probate court. And then the second part of the motion is designating Carla Davis and Chelsea Meister for the responsibility of those hearings. So the motion is on page 13, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Amy about this topic? I think we should take them separately because one deals with the institutions and one deals with the people, if you don't mind.
That's fine.
Okay. All right. Can I have a motion to approve the portion of the motion on page 13 through CI, in other words, above the and?
A motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? That motion carries. Can I get a motion for the bottom part of page 13 to designate Carla and Chelsea as the attorneys for the board for this purpose?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries. Amy.
All right, at the bottom of page 13, the Bipartisan Safer Community Project. Ohio Must provided funding opportunities for boards to address the behavioral health system preparedness, to address and enhance community emergency preparedness. Each board area was eligible to apply for up to $25,000 to develop or enhance their response to such events. Our board has been working on sustaining a plan since 2013, and we have throughout the years done a lot of work with our local emergency management agency as well as Red Cross at one time, as well as collaborating with our community mental health providers and other stakeholders throughout the community to create a plan to address mass critical incidents. In 2020, the board contracted with the National Organization for Victim Advocacy to provide what they refer to as their basic community response team training. And we also have partnered with them several other times since that time, most recently in January of 2024, where we had community stakeholders who were interested in becoming part of our disaster response team participate in this training to enhance the team that we have been developing. So our recommendation is to utilize these funds, the $25,000 from Ohio Must, to partner with a consultant to help us kind of tighten up and finalize our plan, but also bring in other community-wide plans that exist, planning through Red Cross, planning through EMA, and kind of helping us bring all of these plans together so that it's a much more coordinated effort and not just our response plan, but so that it can be, like I said, a more coordinated effort. So there is a motion on page 14 to accept the allocation of the $25,000 from Ohio Must, and then also to issue a bid for proposals for a consultant to help us develop that community emergency response plan.
Any questions for Amy about this project?
I do have a question. Since it's, the expectation is that there's gonna be a coordination between us and other entities, are other entities contributing to the cost of a consultant, or are we assuming that full financial responsibility?
Well, the cost would come from this $25,000, so it would just be us from this point, but it would really be to help bring those plans together for us to finalize our plan, so.
And it's a mental health response.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
not an EMA response to a mental health issue. It's a mental health response to emergencies.
Okay, so we're fitting our plan
our
in
efforts
and
into
coordinating
there.
it
Right,
with other
right.
entities. We're not
Yes.
trying to bring
No.
together other entities
Right,
with us. Okay,
we're not
gotcha.
trying to plan for EMA or Red Cross. We're
Gotcha.
trying to fit what we do and our current processes into what they're already, their structure.
So we're not being
Right.
duplicative with the.
Correct,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Like the EMA already has us written into their plan. This is just to make sure that all of it aligns.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Would the cost of the consultant would be within that 25,000?
Yes.
We'll see.
I know, I'm like sitting here going, oh.
We have 25,000.
And that's Ohio Moss money, right?
Yeah, that's
It's not
Ohio,
levy money,
right,
yeah.
it's Ohio Moss money.
But that was my question as well. So this is just to accept that 25,000, but it's not anticipating the fact that it may be more than. And if
We
it's
hope
more-
it-
if
we hope
more
it's
than,
not.
Where would those funds come from?
Well, we'll determine that when we know the amount.
Although Ohio Moss has said that in October there will be additional funds available if needed for boards.
Okay, so we might be able to attract more funds if we need them versus using our own funds.
Possibly, yes.
Possibly, of course.
So at this point, we have no idea what the cost of a consult for that is going to be.
No.
What kind of council, what kind of agency do you go to for this?
You have some ideas, right?
You mean
I
like?
got ideas too.
You go on the
Where would you
street,
go?
Knock on the door, or where do you find these people?
Well, it could be a consultant through like Nova, the partner that we've used to help do the trainings. It could be somebody through Red Cross where all of their experience and expertise is on disaster planning. So it could be a number of different entities. I don't know people.
Yeah, and because of the amount, we only have to seek bids. We don't have to do an RFP.
Yeah, because consultants are so expensive, I can't see how this is even enough to tap into it.
One step at a time, we'll figure out, we have 25,000, we'll figure out what it is, and if it's too much, we'll rescope the work and figure out what we can get done for 25,000.
So
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. All right, Amy, distribution of ARPA funds.
Okay, this one starts on page 14 down there at the bottom. So if you'll recall, back in 2023, the board was awarded $2 million in American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA funds, from the city of Toledo. The application included 6 projects that have been managed by the board. The mental wellness community grants, which were formerly known as community mini grants, domestic violence treatment, which Family and Child Abuse Prevention Center has been providing the work for that service, the Latinx-based prevention and navigation services, as well as the mental wellness rapid response team, which is that contract with Nova that I mentioned in the previous one, and then trauma and grief support group capacity building, as well as the capital project for Danny's Place. So all 6 projects have been implemented throughout the last fiscal year, and the majority of the programs are recommended to continue into the final year of funding. So we're going into fiscal year 25 will be the final year of funding for these ARPA funds from the city of Toledo. So I'm just going to give a high-level overview of each area there. The first one being the mental wellness community grants. So we approved $450,000 of ARPA funds from the city of Toledo out of that bucket for the mental wellness community grants, which was designed to bolster the grassroots community resources that align with and have the potential to advance our strategic priorities outlined in our 2022 strategic plan. So, moving on to page 15, each awardee could receive up to $20,000, and that project has been managed by Michael and his team in the Health Equity Department. So to date, 3 of the 5 rounds of grants have been awarded. Those grants have concentrated both directly and indirectly on violence, because if you'll remember, the ARPA funds had to center around reducing community violence. Many of the recipient organizations have utilized their structure to provide comprehensive community services to reduce violence and violent crime. The board has thus awarded 33 community wellness grants to organizations of varying sizes throughout the last year plus. The last 3 rounds have broadened the board's community reach through social media posts, billboards, both earned and unearned media, resulting in significant marketing efforts. So at this time, for fiscal year 25, the board is recommending allocating the final $300,000 to the community wellness grants. If you want me to stop in between each one to ask questions, we can do that. If you want me just to go on and answer questions at the end. Okay. So then the next one is domestic violence treatment. Those funds were awarded to Family and Child Abuse Prevention Center to provide treatment services to survivors of domestic violence, as well as they are piloting a program for perpetrators of violence, because the research shows that it is a very significantly high number of perpetrators who are also previous survivors of domestic violence. The unfortunate part is, though, that they usually don't have a payer source the same way that survivors do. So the Family and Child Abuse Prevention Center has been piloting a program to create a payer source mechanism for that specific population, as well as the survivors. And then they also have used the funds to address the immediate needs of survivors. So if a person and maybe their child are leaving a domestic violence situation, they're using some of the funds to pay for just basic needs for that person, whether it's food, shelter, clothing, things along those lines. So we're recommending the final allocation of $60,000 for fiscal year 25 for that program. The next area is the Latinx-based prevention and navigation services. So if you'll recall, we worked with the Sophia Quintero and Arts and Cultural Center, as well as the Believe Center, to begin implementing school-based prevention services as well as navigation services. Both of those agencies have their programs up and running, and the Believe Center is doing some school-based work, as well as have a bilingual behavioral health navigator on staff who is working with the community to help navigate the behavioral health system. And the Sophia Quintero Arts and Cultural Center also have staff hired and have been doing some work in the Escuela Smart School. They had a slower start as they were getting their certification finalized and had a more difficult time hiring staff, but now both programs are staffed and have a training plan in place to get all of their staff trained in their curricula over the summer, and then we'll be fully up and running by next school year. One of the other programs that was funded for this area was Nuestra Gente. Unfortunately, we had some difficulties monitoring that program through Nuestra Gente, so we are not recommending funding for that program moving into fiscal year 25. On page 16, we have the Mental Wellness Rapid Response Team. So that again is in reference to that NOVA training that I referenced earlier, where we had those trainers come in and provide the basic level disaster response training for members of our community who want to volunteer to become part of that team. Throughout that training, we received a lot of feedback from the participants to kind of find out what other areas were needs in our community to help address the overall issue of violence in the community. Like, how can we use these NOVA experts to provide other training? So through those conversations and then meeting with NOVA, we have several trainings scheduled for the next year, and they focus on youth suicide prevention, youth gun violence prevention, trauma-informed supervision. We're going to bring another basic level community crisis response training again, which will be the 4th or 5th one that we'll have had in the last several years. And then also do a refresher for those who have attended that training in the past, because some of them, especially during COVID, the only opportunity to do it was virtual, and it's definitely different to do it virtually than to do it in person. So they're going to come here on site and provide a refresher for anybody who's attended it in the past. And then we're going to do the next level, which is the advanced level community crisis response training, available for those who have attended the basic class. So that will again build our team of disaster responders, so that in the event of a community-wide disaster in our community, we will have trained folks available to volunteer to respond to help the situation and provide support to the families. We also use those funds to contract with Ascend Innovations to create the Local Help Now app that everybody has heard about here recently. So we are recommending doing those trainings with these funds, and then as well as to support our efforts focused on youth, bringing the National Council for Mental Wellness to Lucas County to provide a train the trainer training to do youth mental health first aid. So they will have trainers come on site. We will have a set of folks available to become trainers then for youth mental health first aid, who will then be able to go out in the community and provide that training for those who are interested in it. And then the final one is the Trauma and Grief Support Group Capacity Building. We partnered with Good Grief of Northwest Ohio and Parents of Murdered Children, the Northwest Ohio chapter, to increase and enhance the support groups that they were already providing in our community. Each of them have done a great job over the last year, increasing the number of support groups and just the support in general for families and loved ones who have been impacted by violence in our area. So we are recommending, the board is recommending allocating $25,000 for fiscal year 25 to Parents of Murdered Children, and then $84,000 to Good Grief of Northwest Ohio. So that covers the large bulk of the ARPA funds that are remaining for this last fiscal year, with the exception of there is $61,000 that is unallocated, but once we are able to finalize our plans with those, we'll bring that back to you at another time. So there are several motions here, beginning on page 16, going over to page 17. And I know that was a lot of information, so I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about any of those programs.
I am so impressed with all of what they're able to do with these ARPA funds. But I'm thinking going forward, ARPA funds go away. Is there any discussion around what can we keep, what can we continue to fund?
Well, I can address some of that, and Scott can pick up the areas that I can't respond to. But the wellness grants, I think, will probably go back to what we were funding before, which was a much smaller allocation, but the same purpose behind the community mini grants that we've been providing for several years. The response team training, I think with all that we're investing into that area, we will have a good solid foundation for moving forward, and I think that will help address and strengthen our response team for a while to come. So I don't know that we'll have a lot to do beyond that. Parents of Murdered Children, they are a phenomenal organization that just does amazing work, and I'm so glad that we've had the ability to partner with them. They are not an Ohio Mouse certified agency, so they're not an entity that we will be able to partner with moving forward regardless, unfortunately. And then some programs like the Believe Center and SWAC, we do have plans already to continue funding their services beyond these ARPA funds. So these ARPA funds were mostly used for startup funds for those two programs, but we already intend to fund those programs longer term.
And then when we first started this journey with the City of Toledo, we actually had to identify which programs we were going to consider moving forward and which programs, you know, we were just kind of piloting and then setting free, so to speak. The two that Amy didn't mention, one was the domestic violence program through Family and Child Abuse Prevention Center. We actually created a pilot with them so that they could figure out how to bill Medicaid for their services that they're providing to that group. So that would be their sustainability plan. The other is, the other one sitting out there is Good Grief. We don't have a plan for that right at this point in time. You know, we do expect to receive some additional funds from our new levy next March. We have not identified those funds for specific programs, more general areas. It's possible that this could fit within that, but that really becomes a priority discussion. So each entity that received these funds signed a contract that said there should be no expectation of continuation funding beyond the ARPA. So it will boil down to priority discussions.
And then the reallocation of New Esther Gentry's funds?
We're working on a plan for that.
Okay.
Because there will also be some underspending in some of these areas. So we're going to see what money we have available to us.
Okay.
And I would just reframe that a little bit. They weren't New Esther Gente funds. That will be really, they were ARPA funds. So
Yeah, they are ARPA funds,
right.
You're right, I correct that.
But, so we want to know how much we have available, because that will give us the scope of what we might be able to do. Because we have some plans out there that we talked about. You know, we have our strategic plan, we have our equity and action plan, we have, you know, let's not forget about the needs assessment that was conducted by Louis Guardiola.
Yeah.
That we're still keeping in mind and seeing if we can resolve some of those recommendations via some of these funds. And they may even make it into maybe a recommendation, you know, for additional disaster funds, or, you know, something like the next thing that will be, or the couple things down that we might be talking about. So,
Is there a definite date for the need to spend all these funds?
the date. Yes. I think I know, but I'm looking.
It's a year out after.
So is it September 30, 25?
I think it's December 30th.
It's December.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
December
so
30th.
it's not on the federal fiscal.
No, it's not.
And I think that's really just allocated, expensed by
Correct.
the following year.
Thank you.
Okay.
I've worked with parents of murdered children in the past. What does Good Grief do? The same type program, or is it just parents, or what do they?
Good Grief, sort of their basic programming is providing support groups to children who have lost a loved one. And then they also, in addition to that, offer a support group for parents or caregivers at the same time. They separate it out based on age, and they have different trained facilitators who help facilitate those groups. What they've done with our funds is they've been working on building relationships with the schools and going into the schools to offer that same level of support to those who've been impacted by violence. So, yeah, they've really done a good job, I think, with building those relationships with schools and reaching out to those students who might not otherwise have access to that support.
I have one question to follow up, Mr. Brown here. It's so, when you're saying 1 year from the date that the funds have to be used, if they aren't used, which I think they will all be used, but there's some point, some part left over, will it be reallocated then to maybe one of the other, that they've already received funding? So like, if like the, you know, how the $60,000 maybe wasn't all used, maybe there was 5,000 left, will we be reallocating it to one of the other ones that maybe could use more funds, or is it just done?
So that's always a potential, but let's also remember that we have to work with the city of Toledo because we got this approved through them originally. So it really just depends on how much we tweak it.
Okay.
You know, like last month, I think we increased the parents of murdered children allocation by 10,000. They were fine with that because it wasn't a big stretch from what we're already doing. If there are things that we propose that go outside the boundaries of this, then we probably want to go back to the city administration and say, hey, this is what we're planning to do. Are you good with it or not?
But just as a quick, we submit quarterly reports to them, so we're quarterly at least knowing what the spending is on all of the programs.
I just wanted to hope that, I know with the ARPA funds, that if they weren't, someone wasn't using it fully, we could help one of the other programs where we could have given a little more, making sure it's getting used.
Yeah, we would definitely, we never want to turn back funds.
Right, that's what there's the better way to say it.
Might as well say it.
How do we keep all the
Right.
money?
Yes, we just never want to turn back.
Right.
But we also want to spend on planfully
Right.
and to promote our strategic planning efforts.
Okay, thanks, that was my question.
Amy, can you give us a thumbnail sketch of the steps the board staff takes to evaluate these programs?
Sure, and all
Help
of
you
their,
make the decision?
in all of their contracts, we included certain performance metrics based on what their program was. All of the agencies are obligated through that contract to submit their data outcomes through the quarterly reporting, as well as the program staff meet with the providers relatively regularly, just to kind of talk through how the program is working, if what's working, what's not working, how we can provide any technical assistance, and we learn a lot through those conversations as well. So we use the data and that on-site monitoring to verify that.
You have anything to add, Julie? Julie's the one who actually gets those reports.
I don't have anything to add, except they're all really neat programs. It's really cool to watch what they're doing out there.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I think we can take all these motions together.
I so moved.
Second, airport.
We have a motion and second to adopt all of the proposed motions from the middle of page 16 to the middle of page 17. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstention? The motion's carried. Amy?
I should have mixed this, I should have mixed it up a little bit.
Well, and I just drove back from Columbus, so it's been a long day. All right, health officer designation, this is an easy one. We have one new designation through the ZEF Center who has gone through the application process for health officers, and that motion is on the middle of, or the bottom of page 17.
Any questions of Amy about this motion?
No, but thank you for the information.
Yeah, the demographic report then is on page 18, the
Right.
most current one, yeah.
Right. And for those of you who are new to the board, we get the demographic information, what, a couple times a year, 3 times a year?
We try to do it quarterly or when it
Quarterly,
makes sense
okay.
if there's significant changes.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and second to approve the proposed motion at the bottom of page 17. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Last one, Amy.
All right, the Ohio Mass Problem Gambling Fund. So if you'll recall, during our 120-day notice process, there were a handful of programs that the board gave 120-day notice to, strictly because we weren't guaranteed the funds through Ohio Mass. This is one of those programs where it has been one of our funded programs for several years now. We just needed to know for sure that Ohio Mass was going to be allocating those funds as they have in years past. So we have received that formal guarantee from Ohio Mass. The allocation amount for the gambling funds is consistent with what it was in fiscal year 24, the $143,753. The board partners with the ZEF Center, who really is the expert in gambling services in the state of Ohio as far as treatment and prevention services. So these funds are used for ZEF Center to provide their prevention services as well as the treatment and recovery services throughout Lucas County. And there is a motion on the bottom of page 18.
Any questions for Amy about this one? Entertain a motion to approve the proposed motion at the bottom of page 18.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Okay, from programming to ITP, Steve.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
On page 19 of your packet is a proposed motion for your consideration. This proposed motion's recommendation is intended to provide Ascend Innovations, who's presented to the board on numerous occasions, funding via contract extension to successfully complete its responsibilities as ITP's prime vendor, our general contractor, for phase 2 of our infrastructure transformation project. The cost of the aforementioned contract extension is $5,000. These funds can be taken from the ITP designated fund balance of $58,803.20. So there is no additional cost. This will be pulled from money that we have not yet used.
So we're not increasing the budget, we're simply going ahead and allocating some that's already been set aside.
Absolutely, yes.
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion, any questions for Steve about this?
I have a question. As I recall, there are a number of phases, and we're in, what, the second phase? And
Yes.
we're anticipating 4?
Yes.
Okay. So at this point, the balance of this is anticipated to stretch out as much as possible through those remaining phases. Or
Yeah,
was,
I
or
don't know
was
if
the
I would make that
allocation,
assumption.
or was this allocation intended, at the time we passed this allocation, was it just intended to extend through
Phase
phase
2.
2?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
3 and 4 are up.
Three is planning for the community, 4 is implementation for the community. So
Yes.
it may be able to handle 3, a little,
Okay,
but definitely not 4.
okay, all right, thank you.
Any further questions or discussion? We have a motion and second for the proposed motion in the middle of page 19.
Second.
We already have one.
I thought we already had one, but it never hurts to have two.
Put it in the bank, put it in the bank.
It's like being Henri over here.
Yeah.
Keep it moving.
Calvin wants to move this along, okay. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Already seconded.
Is that an opposition over there, Ms. Sim? No.
No
All right,
opposition.
no. Abstentions? Any abstentions? Motion carries. All right, Scott.
Mark it, 440.
Peer support.
So it gets even easier. We're not asking you for any money, we're just providing you some information right now. We make significant investment in peer recovery support services. The Warner Center being our cornerstone of peer support, peer operated services. Community Wellness Center, we have peer recovery specialists embedded in crisis, in housing services, in ACT teams and treatment agencies. And what we haven't done yet, and we do a considerable amount of training for new certified peer supporters. But what we haven't done yet is develop a community-wide plan on how to develop capacities, not just sheer number of individuals, but how to develop capacities for the agencies to support the individuals that they're hiring to provide services to people that are getting services, treatment services, and families to support, that kind of stuff. So what we're proposing to do is, over the course of the next couple of months, develop an RFP and release an RFP for that purpose. And see what we can get out of that process to determine, how much might it cost for us to develop a, 3 to 5 year plan on what our vision for is peer recovery support services in Lucas County, integrating, the Warner Center and the Wellness and Recovery Center and the peer support that happens at NPI, and then all over, to be more thoughtful about not only our investments but what opportunities there are to improve the implementation of those projects, the management and administration of and supervision of those individuals, but also then capacities and what might we be able to do to offset the significant deficit of trained clinicians in our community by developing additional peer support. And when I say that, I want to be clear. Peer supporters are not clinicians, but they perform a valuable service throughout our community. And so I think it's worthy of our community to plan for that population and how do we bring them more, more structure to what our thoughts are around peer recovery, peer support, and how we might further our investments in those areas. So this is for information only. Senna has agreed to chair the work group. And of course, we're going to rely on several of you. Because we are going to affirm nothing about us without us in this. This is certainly something that we would want to occur. And, we've been very successful in engaging work group activities before under various different circumstances. And so this is an opportunity for us to look a little differently at what we're doing around peer recovery and support and be mindful of what we're doing. A little more mindful. We're always mindful of what we're doing, but more mindful, I guess.
It's going to be, I think, a wonderful thing, because if you think about it, we talk to our friends. Each one of us has our own personal peer group that we go to, that we talk to. And in integrating that into our whole vision and bringing it in, we'll be able to see the whole picture, where, as opposed to the pockets and then trying to fit the pockets, like where does this fit in? It'll all fit into this great big puzzle. So I'm very excited about the potential of empowering these peer groups in a way that will really help solidify the process.
I want to mention how far we've come. I know most of you know that I've been around a long time. I continue to be around a long time, and when we first started the Tom Warner Center and the programming, it was met with some, is this going to work? Some people didn't quite understand, but obviously we were supportive and we continued. So kudos to what a wonderful job this has been, and that how we've grown. This is absolutely fabulous.
May I
Thank
ask
you,
a question before we go on?
Sure,
Just so that I'm sure that I'm understanding this. So the peer support counselors, is that what we're calling them? Individuals are going to offer peer support to those people who are receiving treatment, or are they peer support to the counselors that are giving the treatment, or both?
No, they're not peer support to the counselors.
Okay.
So think of it as you have peer operated services, Warner Center, Wellness and Recovery Center from NPI. But then you have peer supporters embedded in those agencies that provide support to the members and the people that are coming through their agent, at the Wellness Center, their building. We also have peer support built within NPI that provides peer support to people who are receiving housing. You have peer supporter as a part of the ACT team to support people who are receiving ACT team services. You have peer supporters in crisis that sometimes are linked with an emergency services worker and go out, and you also have them that are just at like crisis stabilization units or whatever. Peers play a valuable role in showing the way for individuals who are just getting into the system, or maybe have been in the system but need additional support that is non-traditional in nature. They're not a clinician. They're somebody to walk side by side with them and say, hey, this is what I've done to maintain my recovery. this is something that you can work, you might work
So it's
for
like,
you.
like a
Right.
buddy system,
It's-
and there's somebody who has also received
Think
treatment
sponsor,
or help. or
think
whatever.
sponsor like AA.
Okay,
Is it-
all right, that's what I was.
Well, that, no, you can't use sponsor.
Well, I said think
Yeah,
sponsor,
think
not
sponsor,
use sponsor.
Yeah, it was just the terminology, but when you're talking about peer support, they're providing recovery interventions. The interventions that they're supplying to the individuals that they're working with, these are recovery interventions. They're not sitting back in a therapeutic process. They're assisting this individual with the next steps of their recovery. Like basically, a lot of people don't know what am I gonna feel like when I get into this situation.
So it's
with
kind of
me, with
the
these
day-to-day.
people. What am I gonna feel in here when I step back out? How do I manage that? You know, what are some of the resources out there that for me to do that? So they just kind of help that person along the way, but it's a professional service now. So we're looking at it more so not from a paraprofessional, but from a professional since it's a certification and it's billable. So we're looking at it exactly from a professional standpoint, and if we do that, we see they're providing professionalized recovery services, not so much so geared and pigeonholed inside of a 12-step process or even a sponsor-directed process, but more so a person-centered, peer-receptive process, and it's reciprocal.
So the other thing we know is that traditional methods of supervising individuals that are employees, that are peer supporters, need additional training, techniques, support. Some may have had jobs before, others may not have had jobs before. So there's different supports the agencies need to effectively supervise individuals and to keep them employed. And we also know that our equity efforts around peer support and access to our peer-operated services need bolstered. So we'll be looking at those items as well, like, why aren't we getting a number of trained African-American peer supporters or Latino, Spanish-speaking peer supporters, things like that, or who's engaging what services, in those peer-operated services, and what can we do to change that, or if it needs to be changed, that kind
So
of
this
stuff.
is an opportunity if there are diverse groups that we can't necessarily match up with their preferred ethnic group in the counselor situation, we could perhaps do it. This is another resource that would leave openings for that to happen.
Yes, although we always want to be sure that we don't frame them as clinicians.
Yeah, no, got it. Okay, thank you, I appreciate that.
It's a buddy system, if you will.
Yeah, my son uses a peer support person, and he had one that was a part of the system and then graduated on to be a peer support person and was very, very valuable. Unfortunately, he relapsed, but he when he was good, he was good. He was the one that my son could really relate to because he had walked that path. And then just simple things as far as entering back into society and helping them to get their driver's license and ID and things like that. They are incredible, so, yeah.
I think we found a couple of members.
Okay, all right, this is great.
Great. Any other questions, comments, discussion about that? All right, Amy, let's talk about the Community Transition Program.
Okay, page 20. This is another one of those programs that received a 120-day notice, but we have since been informed by Ohio Mass that Lucas County is being allocated $95,000 for the Community Transitions Program, and that program is for adults who are returning to Lucas County from the Ohio Department of Rehab and Correction facilities, so the prisons throughout Ohio. It's Lucas County residents who are coming back. So for the last several years, we've partnered with TASK to implement Community Transition Program, and it's basically the prison system identifies who's eligible based on their classification, meaning that they have serious mental illness or substance use disorder. They're returning to Lucas County, and then they can partner, they get connected with TASC, and then TASC can use these funds to pay for treatment that is not already covered or other recovery supports such as housing assistance, employment services, things along those lines. So the funding period is for the fiscal year beginning July 1st. And there is a motion on the middle of page 20 to accept the allocation from Ohio Mass and then allocate the funds to TASC to implement the program.
Second.
Are there any questions for Amy?
Are there caps on that administrative cost usage?
Probably 10%. Yeah,
Yes.
10%.
Any other questions, comments? We entertain a motion for the proposed motion on the middle of page 20.
So moved.
Second.
I thought we just did.
Oh, yeah.
I can't.
We got two in the
We are fine in
All right, sorry.
it.
All right, all in favor, say aye. Any opposed?
He said, do it again.
Any abstention? Which is Susie, show me. All right, Amy, suicide prevention campaign.
Okay, this is another example of the 120-day notice program. So for the last several years, actually since November of 2020, the board has received what's called crisis flex funds from Ohio Mass, and we have used a portion of those funds to develop and implement a countywide suicide prevention promotion campaign. So the board is recommending that we continue on with that campaign again for fiscal year 25. And it has grown since its inception. In the beginning, it was, I believe, 5 agencies. It has since expanded to, I think, a total of 9 agencies. And we have worked with all of these prevention certified agencies to focus on a specific population that is sort of their level of expertise. So there is a table from page 20 to 21 that identifies each agency that is a part of this countywide campaign, who their target population is, what their prevention-wide strategies are, and then their allocation amount. So then on page 21 and 22, we have listed there all of the motions to allocate those funds to each respective agency. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Amy? These are all our Ohio Moss funds?
Correct.
Don't forget.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I just did it.
Second.
Calvin would like to do
I
it
can't
again.
hear
so-
out
The third time.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? That motion carries, and what we have just done is approved the motions that start on the beginning of page, or excuse me, the middle of page 21 through the top third of page 22. Steve, HIPAA notice.
Actually, Julie will be briefing that too.
Perfect. Go.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm the privacy officer here at the MHRSB, and to stay in compliance with the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, or HIPAA, we must provide clients who receive board funding a copy of the board's notice of privacy practices. We provide this once at the onset of services, so out in the agencies, and then it's required to provide it every 3 years thereafter. So this will be for clients who receive board-funded services from June 16th, 2021 to June 15th, 2024. The communication will be mailed with, will be in English, Spanish, and Arabic, and if approved, the project will begin immediately. Board staff is requesting $15,000 for printing, mailing, postage, and translation services. There's a motion, kind of on the bottom of page 22, for approval.
Okay. Any questions for Julie? Any discussion about this? Yeah, Nima.
The group, having received the services from 2021 to next week or whenever the 15th is, the notice is is providing them information prospectively, should they continue to receive services, how it will be handled. And that's just the pool of people we're using to send it out to.
Yes, so it's everybody who's been,
In the past, received
Yep.
services?
Right.
Okay.
in the last 3 years.
Current service, people coming in currently are given the HIPAA information via the agencies.
And the data for it is pulled from our billing system.
So we're duplicating what they're,
We're required
Yeah,
to
yeah.
give them a separate notice every
right,
3
okay,
years. Yes.
of how we're handling
Yes.
and complying with
Okay.
our HIPAA obligations. Gotcha, okay.
I think, because I was confused, like, if they're getting it the agency, why do we, the requirement is we have to do it as well?
There's two different ones, right? When they come in, and then once every 3 years. You all, with your health insurance, you get these things all the time as well.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get them annually, sometimes, right, well.
Yeah, the ones I pay attention to is where they tell me that somebody got some information that they shouldn't have gotten, and, yeah.
And it's
Well, we won't be doing that because we don't have any of
Well,
those.
yeah, right.
Good.
And I take it there's no way that what the agencies, I should probably know the answer to this, but I don't. There's no way that what the agency is giving to the patients could encompass us.
It's a separate,
on the-
it's a separate requirement.
Okay, thank you. I do that, I just wanted to see.
Any further questions for Julie or any further discussion? All right. There's a proposed motion toward the bottom of page 22. Entertain a motion.
So moved.
And a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. All right, Scott.
So this motion is reserved for Calvin and Erica. And so, we want to put to bed the cost of renovating the suite. We got our final bill.
Okay.
If you recall, we originally allocated $100,000. We originally allocated $100,000 back in August. And on May 16th, we received the bill. The bill was actually $155,568.54. Now, we knew it was going to be more than $100,000 when we started to do add-ons, right? The original allocation, or the original request, contract, was, I think it's now around $93,000 or so. But when we started to get into it, there were some modest requirements that needed to be handled, the wiring, for instance, to support the ITP. We did have things done to separate or to stabilize our internet connection. Also, the lighting, if you recall, the lighting couldn't be independently turned off. That needed to be handled. Access control will change, so where your badges will actually swipe right now. There's some accessibility issues that need to be resolved. Those things have been working on. So we had 100. So we have 55,568.54 that we needed to come up with. And we were able to absorb that in our administrative budget and undesignated ITP. And so I'm not asking for any additional money. What I'm asking for you to allow us to do is change the agreement, the reimbursement agreement for the county commissioners, so that we can pay the full bill. The money, the additional 55,568.54, I outlined 39 will come from this year's administrative budget. That includes 14 in equipment, and 15 in miscellaneous, and 10,000 out of my executive director discretionary fund. The remaining 16,568.54 will come from the designated ITP funds. Now, you took 5,000 out of that 58,000 ITP earlier, So your actual total in the remaining designated ITP line, if you allow this to occur, is 37,234.46, if Scott math is correct, which is questionable. But we'll get you close. So this is one of those items that will finalize our footprint here, as far as paying all of our bills as they currently are. There might be a few more investments that we need to make to get things where we want them, but that's for a later discussion, I guess. So there's a motion on the top of page 23 for Calvin and Eric.
Thank you.
Would this be paid out as amortized over time through our rent, or is this going to be a lump sum?
No, this is a lump sum. Yeah, this is part of, when you approve the original 100,000, you also approve the reimbursement agreement with the county Board of Commissioners. So this is the bill's due. As soon as we get this finally approved, we will pay the bill.
Okay, so question.
Yes.
This says 90,000.
That was the original amount that we entered into the agreement with the county commissioners was 90,000, the original. We originally approved 100,000.
Oh, okay, but didn't involve the commissioners in that?
Correct.
Okay, gotcha.
Because we thought there was going to be some overruns related to the wiring and all that, and it actually came out a little more than we had hoped for. Plus, we made some tweaks, and there was, within that budget, I mean, I can get into it if you really want me to get into it, but there were some fees and things that we did not account for that we wouldn't have known at the time.
Okay.
And about 20,000 of that is fees that we would not have known at that point.
Okay, all right.
Any questions for Scott?
Just not pertinent, but to me, but what is the annual amount for the executive director's discretionary fund?
20,000.
20,000?
Any other questions for Scott? Is there a motion for the top of page 23?
So moved.
Second?
Second. Got it.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
Oh, we're not sitting next to Calvin anymore, so.
Trying to get it over.
No, I mean. All right, that concludes that portion of the agenda. Open session. Anyone? Richard, please start.
Just briefly, next week at planning and the Plan Commission, they will hear 2 more tobacco shops. Now, Toledo City Council has made it very clear they're probably going to be turning these down. One of them is at 135 South Byrne. That one is near a school for people with autism. If it is approved, it would need a waiver. The staff is recommending against that. Another one is at 4103 Monroe, and the staff is recommending approval of that. But City Council will have the final say, and they'll hear those 2 cases unless they're deferred at their July meeting. At the same meeting next week, they'll be hearing from something called Cosmic Investments. They want to put a donut shop on Holland Sylvania Road. It's near the Kroger's, but the staff is recommending disapproval because it doesn't comply with something called the Draft Forward Toledo Plan, whatever that is. But if they agree with the staff and they turn this down, that will be a first. I've never seen them turn down a donut shop. A donut shop is way out on Holland Sylvania Road because it's not incompatible with some plan that they came up with that I've never heard.
There's a plan against donuts. We need to fix that.
I second.
City Council will have the final say on that at their July meeting. As you probably saw in the news media, City Council is set tomorrow to approve a $400,000 settlement with people who were injured in the rioting, or whatever you want to call it, the disturbances after the George Floyd killing. They went into executive session last week at their agenda review. It was about 45 minutes, and when they came back, boy, they were in high spirits. I mean, they were just raring to go. They basically came back to get their possessions, and they were headed for the door, and they had to be reminded, come on, guys, you've got to come back and vote to come out of executive session, then you've got to vote to put this on the agenda. And I stayed for the 45 minutes. I was the only person that stayed, but they were in such a good mood that they all just took off, and I said, they're getting very lax over at City Council. This is a good example. This is the Toledo City Journal. It is a public document. I've been reading it for years. Anybody can get it. And I'm reading it, and I imagine my surprise when I get to the last page. Oops, somebody stapled an inter-office communication. It's basically employees at City Council complaining about all the increased paperwork now that they've added some new people there. I did politely mention it to them. You guys need to be a little more careful about this sort of thing. We've got a news media that loves to make mountains out of molehills. But it just seems to me they are really getting careless. They're getting lax over at City Council. And that's what's going on at one.
Thank you, Richard.
And they're saying no to donut shops.
I know, right?
Oh.
Yeah.
Anything else from our visitors? All right. Scott wants to filibuster again.
Adjournment? Is that where we're?
No, we're not in adjournment yet.
Not adjournment yet.
The in-between line.
No.
I'm doing open session. I want to remind everybody, Monday, 11 a.m. Danny's Place groundbreaking, 2333 Arlington. Park in the Bowser parking lot, walk across the street. There's a big tent. That's where we'll be at. All right?
Did you say the time again?
11 a.m.
Monday's supposed to be partly cloudy and a high of 73.
Perfect
Are you
weather.
providing shovels?
We have shovels, yes. But if you are so inclined, you may bring your own.
Hey, Scott, you know, some of us just might show up with our own shovel. You never know.
So the other thing that I wanted, we can't let today go by without mentioning that there are several people that in their current role appointee as an Ohio Master County Commissioner, that this is their last Planning and Oversight Committee meeting. So we need to recognize those folks who have not yet been reappointed and those that are not seeking reappointment. So let's start with Jim Stengel will not be seeking reappointment. He's not here today, but we should always recognize him. And David will not be seeking reappointment, but we need to recognize him for all his efforts. And then also we have Andrea, Calvin, and Nima, who we will be seeking reappointments for. So thank you until you're reappointed. You know, we are working on that process now, and we're pretty confident that things will go as planned. And then just a reminder, we have no Planning and Oversight Committee meeting in July. So take July off. But we do need you here on June 18th for the final board meeting.
Yep, 2 weeks from today. See everybody.
I do want to mention that I did go to the library and saw the speaker from the book that we got last.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I did go. It was very good, very well attended. The book is very good.
It is good.
I'm halfway through. My sister beat me and she's all done. And I invited her to that evening. So it was a great evening. I just want you to know it was very successful.
And if people haven't picked up a book yet, let me know. I have one for you. Okay?
All right. Now we are adjourned.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Good work. Thanks, David. Rather efficient.